Black Network event. I'm your moderator and host, Dom Scott. Before we kick off, let's go through a few housekeeping points. Today will be recorded, so if you're not comfortable with this, please turn off your videos, change your name so you can remain anonymous. Secondly, mute your microphone so we have no background noise. And thirdly, the session today will last about an hour, starting with presentations, followed by time thereafter for Q&A. So please have your questions ready. Okay, there's one person who needs to mute. There we go. So the topic today is governorship and trusteeship. We have an amazing panel lined up for you. We have Penny Wilson, CEO of Getting on Board, and Lynn King, who is the head of governance programs at the Education and Employers Task Force. Both businesses focus their energies on putting people just like you into governor and trustee positions. I've had the pleasure of talking to each of them over the course of this week, and doing so has left me inspired and enthused, and I really hope at the end of the session today, you'll feel the same way. A few thoughts to kick things off. Firstly, I think we need to get a basic understanding as to what trusteeship and governorship is all about. Secondly, we need to understand how it can benefit your personal career aspirations. And thirdly, we need to understand why we need more governors and trustees within the Black community. Lynn and Penny are two shining examples of allies, both becoming passionate advocates for increasing the amount of Black representation. So I'll be doing my best to extract their knowledge and advice so you can gather your thoughts on the topic. We also have some first-hand experiences being provided by our very own Kike Oniwinde, founder of the BYP, who also works as a trustee at Getting on Board alongside Penny. And we have Horatio Georgestone, who besides being the founder of his own organisation, the YDWC, and a senior policy advisor at Her Majesty's Treasury, is also a school governor. It's incredible then that they find the time, and it raises the question, if they can, why can't we? So let's talk about why this topic is so important to the Black community. I'd like to start by talking about Chadwick Boseman, who sadly passed away last month. This might seem like a peculiar place to start, so let me elaborate. Chadwick, through his depiction of the Black Panther, irreversibly changed the Black narrative for the better and provided the means for us to reimagine what Black excellence looked like. And through the imagery of Wakanda, we got a sneak peek into a world where potential was matched by opportunity. As a kid, I wished I had role models like this on the big screen to look up to and shape my aspirations. As we grow up though, we realize that superheroes don't always wear costumes and fight baddies, but instead they are regular, ordinary people who in some way support their community. It could be a nurse working on the front line or someone working on the buses, making sure our society can function. My grandparents did these roles when they came to this country as part of the Windrush generation. They are my superheroes. However, I've come to learn that superheroes can take many other forms, like people who work almost entirely behind the scenes in institutions or in the corridors of power. It's these people who have the ability, by shaping policy, to affect hundreds or thousands of lives with the stroke of a pen. But the problem, acutely for the Black community, is we can't be what we can't see, or at the very least, it makes the task harder. There is a serious lack of Black representation at this level and a lack of visibility for those who are out there. As an example, ethnic minorities make up 33% of the school pupil population, but less than 4% of school governors. It's important then, as a Black community, we take the opportunity to buck the trend, acquire the skills we need to operate at board level, and create a society that better reflects our needs as it does for others. That's what trusteeship is all about. That's what this session is all about. So please have your notebooks ready and be prepared to ask some questions. And just before I hand over to Penny, we ran a poll at the beginning of the session of this event, and we wanted to get a gauge as to whether people considered being a trustee or a governor prior to hearing about what we've advertised today. So please take the time to fill that poll in, and then we'll gauge people's responses towards the end of the session to see if we've moved the dial in the right direction. Penny, over to you.
Thank you, Dom. What an introduction. It's wonderful to be here this evening. Thank you so much for inviting me. I've always worked with or for charities, and I'm also a serial trustee myself, so I absolutely have that burning passion for serving as a charity trustee. I'm on my 4th trusteeship at the moment, and I just cannot imagine a time where I don't have trusteeship running alongside my personal and professional life. Tell me in the chat, has anybody been a trustee before? Has anybody applied to be a trustee? Is anybody currently a trustee? I'd love to hear that, and I'd love to hear in the chat where you're a trustee as well. So I've been asked to talk for about 10 minutes. That's not very long to cram a lot in. So I've tried to pick the things that I think you're going to most want and need to know. But please do feel free to stick questions in the chat as we go, and perhaps we can come back to those when we get to the Q&A bit. So why trustees? There are 700,000 people in England and Wales who serve as trustees. They are the most senior leaders in charities. They are responsible for making sure charities are well run. And the reason that matters is because well-run charities means that we have well-run services for the people and animals and heritage and environment that charities support. So it does matter to society. And this matters more than ever at the moment, because charities are seeing a huge increase in demand. Many of them are right at the coalface of things like education, domestic violence, and so on. But at the same time, they're seeing a 50% decrease in income. So it's really tough times for charities, as for many other sectors. So strong, diverse charity boards have never been more important. And 3/4 of charities say they really struggle to recruit the trustees that they need. And that isn't at all surprising when you hear that only 10% of trustee roles are ever advertised. So charities are really shooting themselves in the foot there. And this is shown by this statistic, which is only 14% of charities feel well equipped to deal with their challenges given who's on their board. And hopefully that's where you come in. So who is actually missing from charity boards? 2/3 of trustees are over 50. Only 36% of trustees are women, and people of colour represent 8% of trustees. So I don't know if you've noticed, but it's 2020, and that's what charity trusteeship looks like. So this is something we've got to change. But a few things on the landscape of charities and trusteeship. Would anybody like to hazard a guess at what 168,000 is in the chat? What's 168,000? And while you're thinking about that, I'll tell you that 950,000 is the number of trusteeships. So I said earlier there are 700,000 trustees. Well, about 1/4 of people are trustees of more than one charity. 2,000 trustees are appointed on average every week in England and Wales, and nobody's guessed about the 168,000, but it's the number of registered charities in England and Wales. So 90,000 is the number of vacancies. So the opportunity is massive. And of course, charities are everywhere. They're all over the country, wherever you live. They're different shapes, they're different sizes, they're different causes. So if you want to be a trustee, it's not difficult to find a charity that kind of speaks to you, that's of interest to you. And thank you for your comments. Somebody applied to be a board, somebody who's a school governor, somebody's just become a trustee in their first trusteeship. Lovely, thank you. So what actually is a trustee? So in a nutshell, you are an unpaid committee member. There are a couple of exceptions to being paid, but really the vast majority of trustees are unpaid. And you are the people who...
Well, I'm telling your mom's too busy not to try to mean this.
I'm not speaking for all the people who lead a charity and decide how it is run. There's some brilliant guidance on the Charity Commission website if you want to read more about becoming a trustee. This jigsaw picture is theirs, so I'm just going to pick out a couple of the things that are on there. You're there to ensure the charity is carrying out its purposes for the public benefit. So for example, if you join a charity and it's registered to, I don't know, provide mental health support for people in the London Borough of Barnet, then you need to know as a trustee that everything the charity does speaks to that purpose and it doesn't operate outside that purpose. just going to pick up as well a couple of the others. The bottom left one, there, you're there to manage your charity's resources responsibly. That sounds really obvious, doesn't it? You know, we're not going to embezzle the funds, we're not going to raid the bank account, but actually there's much more behind this for a charity. You need to make sure you've got enough money in order to pay your staff and your rent and so on. But you're also not there to sit on a pot of gold. If you've got a lot of money in the bank account, the Charity Commission often ask you why. They want to know why, because actually you're there to spend the money on charitable services, not to sit there on a pot of gold. So for charities, money is a means to an end. It's not the end itself. And then finally, just to pick up this one, you're there to act with reasonable care and skill. I think that's really important because the Charity Commission doesn't expect you to be an expert in charity accounting, an expert in charity law. They do expect you to exercise common sense. They expect you to turn up in every single sense of the word. And they expect you to bring in external expertise if you've got a really serious decision to make and you feel like your board hasn't got the right people to do that. So a couple of, actually no, first of all, why would you want to be a trustee? Tell me in the chat, is anybody thinking about being a trustee? Why do you think you might want to be a trustee? I'd love to hear any kind of feelings at this stage as to why that might be of interest, because they're so diverse. It's always wonderful to hear people's reasonings. But this is the result of some research that Getting on Board did. We found that 96% of trustees said they'd learn new skills, which I think is incredibly high, because people often don't become trustees to learn new skills. They become trustees to give skills, but actually an enormous percentage say that actually that, you know, they do learn skills. 84% said it made them feel happier and thank you. We've got Jemima saying she wants to become a trustee to give back, and that's it, isn't it? Get that giving back and feeling useful and doing something that you've chosen to do for a cause you're passionate about feels really good. It feels good to do something like that. And then finally, I'm going to just pick on that 22%, which is the lowest stat on there. 22% of our respondents said they got a promotion as a direct result of being a trustee, which I think is huge. And I think that's partly a function of age, in that if 2/3 of trustees are over 50, actually, if you are in your 20s or 30s or 40s and you have that experience sitting on your CV, then it stands you in really good stead professionally. And I can see here that people are saying, why did they get a promotion? Thank you, Tolu. I think it's because it looks good, but actually in terms of the skills that people acquire, it might be that in your day job, you're a marketing director or you're a fundraiser, but actually when you're a charity trustee, you're under the bonnet of a whole charity, and you might do marketing in your day job, but actually you're also exposed as a trustee to finance and HR and fundraising and safeguarding and evaluation and premises and all of these other functional areas which you might not be exposed to in your day job. And also, you know, you're in charge. So all of that strategic experience, very senior experience that again, you may not yet have in your day job. So it really stands you in good stead. And thank you. There's some lovely comments here about why people might be interested. I'm nosy and I love helping people. Brilliant. Yeah, I'm nosy too. That's a big part of it, isn't it? Couple of FAQs. How long have I got left, Dom?
You've got 2 minutes.
Right. Okay. I'm not going to do the FAQs then. That's time and liability, but happy to pick them up in the questions afterwards. So a couple of barriers to becoming a trustee. A really major barrier is this broken application system, that not enough vacancies are advertised. I've included some links here. Hopefully you'll get the slides afterwards. So there are trustee vacancy sites, and actually Google's job search picks up trustee vacancies, so you can have a look at those. And there's also absolutely nothing wrong with finding a charity you like the look of and just dropping them a line and saying you'd like to be considered as a trustee. About half of the people we work with get their trustee role that way, through a speculative application. Is assuming you'll join the board of a huge charity. And the reason why you probably won't is that actually most charities aren't this size. So 75% of charities have an annual income for the whole charity of under £100,000. So this is the majority of the charity sector. It doesn't look like the big boys like Oxfam. It looks like small to medium sized, really important organisations like these. And then my final barrier is not being able to represent your assets well. And there's lots of things underneath this. So for starters, CVs are only ever read by people who understand what you do. So, you know, your CV is written for use within your own sector or skills area, whereas actually when you apply to be a trustee, the person reading your CV might be a retired head teacher, a social worker, a banker, a charity fundraiser. They could be literally anything. So if your CV is impenetrable, which most are to people outside of your sector, then it's already not helping. And I think there's more there as well, you know, people not really not knowing how they can be useful, perhaps because they haven't worked in the charity sector before, so don't know what charities need. And then just to finish, how getting on board can help. Kike asked me to say something about this. So if you're on an employee resource group, with your employer, we work with employers like this. We come in, we do introductory webinars, and we support employees to become trustees. If you're coming to us as an individual, we send out vacancies daily on our LinkedIn and on our Twitter, so feel free to connect with us. We've got a Festival of Trusteeship coming up where we're going to have lots of low-cost workshops, and we also have a flagship program called the Charity Board Leadership Program. So I'm going to stop there. Hopefully I kept to time.
Penny, that was fantastic and spot on with the time. And what I really sort of took away from that is being a trustee offers you a real complete package of benefits. I think it can make your career potential more dynamic, give you more strings to your bow, but also on a very basic human level, it feels good to give back. The other stat that really stood out for me is that only 10% of positions are advertised. So clearly there's a bit of work to be done, but this is what getting on board is all about. So I've got some good questions for you in the Q&A about the work getting on board does to advertise the roles and ensure the right people find the right roles. Talking of getting on board, so Kike works with you, doesn't she, on getting on board? And Kike, can you share your experiences, please, in regards to working with Penny in that organisation?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Can people see and hear me? Or
yeah, we can see you and hear you.
So my name is Kike, founder and CEO of BYP Network. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Dom, for being the moderator. It's nice. So essentially, part of the reason we wanted to put on this webinar was because last time when we did this event for BAME Networks, one of the 5 things that people wanted to see going forward to mobilize change was more of us in leadership positions. As we know, there is a big problem on, you know, C-suites and boards of large organizations, or just, you know, organizations in general. So it does seem like it's a big battle. Like, how do we become on that C-suite, or how do we kind of get to those senior leadership positions? And one of the ways actually to do this is through trusteeship and governorships, because it is a leadership position. As Penny described, you do get a lot of skills that you learn. You know, you are running a charity, or you are running an organization, and you're in control of the finances, you're in control of the reputation and things that happen for that charity. And I think even being able to get that kind of experience is super vital for anybody. I think there's a myth that you have to be 60 years old, right? We just saw the stats, but it's actually for any of us or anyone, as long as you're over the age of 18. And again, not enough of us are trustees on charity boards, but a lot of us are starting initiatives that are, you know, social good initiatives, because we want to make a change, whether it's in our community or climate change. But there are charities that actually need us. And funny enough, the reason I joined Getting on Board is because it's so aligned to BYP, because, you know, they help underrepresented people get on charity boards. And so, you know, BYP Network is all about changing the Black narrative, connecting Black professionals to opportunities. So whether it's jobs, whether it's employers, you know, whatever it is, it's how do we better ourselves as a community? So I got the opportunity randomly, actually. It's quite a funny story. So it was during this lockdown. I never considered becoming a trustee before, was never on my radar, way too busy, did not think that's something that I would want to do. And I was speaking to one of my friends, actually, and just talking about, you know, what this lockdown has kind of taught me, and, you know, what am I thinking about? And he kind of mentioned, like, you know, have you ever thought about becoming a trustee? His name's Kenny Mafidon. I don't know if some of you should have heard of him. He's you know, a young leader as well. And he's on the board of trustees for let me not get it wrong, like The Lottery or Comic Relief, I think, or BBC Children in Need, one of those big ones anyway. And essentially, you know, that's the first time I ever thought about it, because again, it never crossed my mind. And then randomly in BYP Network inbox, this opportunity came from getting on board. And it just felt like so perfect that, you know, the day before someone's talking about becoming a trustee and the next day this position comes. And I also think because the community spoke about we need to be trustees or we need to be on leadership positions, it kind of felt like another way that BYP Network can help open doors. So if we're directly part of getting on board, you know, we can funnel our members to become trustees across thousands of charities. So all of that came together and it just felt like a perfect fit. I've been a trustee now for about, I think, a month or two. You know, again, it doesn't take that much of your time, but you do learn a lot. I've never been involved in a charity before, and it's very different than a commercial business. But I get to speak to different people from across the country with different expertise and life experiences, and I'm learning a lot already. And I genuinely think that it is something good for our community to do, and we need to increase that statistic of 8%. You know, we need to get it to 13%, 15%, 100%. So yeah, that's me.
Kike, that's amazing. And I think people will be listening, wondering how you find the time. You've already got a lot on your plate, but I love the way you've managed to sort of harness together to be greater than the sum of their parts, in terms of recognizing we need more leaders generally within the Black community, and they're acquiring skills in their day job, but if they can be helping their communities and also upskilling themselves through being a trustee or a governor, then it's a win-win for all concerned. Let's hand over now to Lynn King, who's Head of Governance Programs at Education and Employers Task Force, who will talk to us about some of the great work they are doing. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dom. Really appreciate the introduction. So as you've introduced me, I'll move straight along to introducing Inspiring Governance. Inspiring Governance is a Department for Education funded programme, and it's delivered by the charity Education and Employers. It's an online platform which connects professional volunteers with schools in England to meet the growing number of vacancies on school governing boards in England. It's estimated that there is at least one vacancy on every school governing board in England. However, that's very conservative, and I would say it's probably nearer double that. To put some context around what that looks like, there are over 22,000 schools in England, so that's an awful lot of empty seats at the table. So Inspiring Governance works alongside employers, professional associations, member networks like BYP, who support their staff and their members to encourage them to join school governing boards to make a real impact on the lives of young people. So what actually is the role of a governor? Well, it's not that much different to what Penny's already gone through in terms of a trustee, but it's in the context of the school. So it's very much a strategic role rather than operational. So if you view it as a kind of eyes-on and hands-off approach, the three core functions on the screen there are detailed. That's from the Department for Education's Governance Handbook. So agreeing the long-term strategy for ensuring compliance of the school's clarity of vision, its ethos and its culture, and holding the executive and senior leaders to account for the conduct and educational performance of the school and its pupils, and to oversee the financial performance of the school and agree the budget and staffing structure that's required to deliver the strategy, and also ensuring that the money is appropriately spent. So the skills and attributes that boards need, now that is by no means an exhaustive list, but what I would say is, speaking with chairs of governors on a regular basis, as I do in my day job, and also being on a governing board myself, I know that when we're looking for governors, there are two key areas that they tell us time and time again. Number one, we want somebody who is committed and that they're going to attend the meetings and that they're going to participate in those meetings. Number two is having the courage to ask challenging questions when you're in those meetings. So I guess what that equates to is that when you do get your seat at the table, you use your voice accordingly. Why we need more Black governors and trustees? Well, that is so that we are reflective of society. Cognitive diversity encourages different viewpoints and helps avoid a groupthink scenario, which, as we know, often results or always results in poor quality, unchallenged decisions. To provide visible role models for young people, which we know from our research inspires and instills confidence in them. And to build a connectedness between the school and its community, which are stakeholders, which in turn helps to build trust. And to help to set a culture of equality and diversity in schools, and that will ensure that barriers, biases, and stereotypes don't go unchallenged. So what does the national picture look like? Well, 18% of registrations with Inspiring Governance are classed as BAME, that's across the board, and 18% of appointments that we make onto governing boards are also classed as BAME. However, that is the reality when you break it down for this group and just look at the Black representation. And I will move on to the next one because this one refers to young governors. So of that, 2% are under the age of 40. And, you know, that's my appeal today is we do need, as Penny said, we want more young people who are interested in becoming governors and trustees, particularly with school governors, because young people have a much more recent experience of the education system and therefore can come in with a fresh set of ears and eyes to be able to make a difference and apply some of their, you know, lived experience. So I don't even need to say that governing boards don't reflect the communities that they serve. But there are seeds of hope, and I will share with you the Inspiring Governance side of things, which is that 6% of volunteers who register with us identify as Black. 7% of volunteers that we appoint identify as Black, and that demonstrates that by using Inspiring Governance to recruit volunteers onto boards, their boards are reaching beyond their existing networks and their personal connections, which has always been, you know, historically the case is, you know, you speak to somebody, you speak to someone who's in your, you know, in your gym or your whatever membership you are. This way we're reaching out beyond that, and thereby we are increasing the diversity of volunteers appointed. However, there is much more to be done, and we do recognise that. So, what are the benefits? Because we do, you know, there does need to be some benefits. So there's actually rather a lot. So firstly, it's an opportunity to be part of a strategic team of individuals from different backgrounds who come together generally once a term, and you'll meet people that you might not ordinarily meet. I know on my board, I would never ordinarily have met anybody who's a governor on my board of governors, but collectively as a group, we're pretty awesome, to be honest. As a community, so we know schools are integral to the communities they serve, and to fulfill their duties effectively, a governing board has to have a balance and diversity of skills, experiences and backgrounds. And as a school governor, what you would bring would be your own set of professional skills and also your own lived experiences that you would bring to the table. It offers you the opportunity to get involved and to make a positive impact on the chances of the life chances of young people, and it'll help them to achieve their full potential, and it's just really rewarding. You'll also utilise and refine the professional skills that you already have, but also gain new transitional skills that you can take back to the workplace. So, for example, you might find yourself sitting on a subcommittee that reviews data that relates to the outcomes of boys in year 6. So you will be taking back with you planning, data analysis, there may be some finance skills in there and recruitment as well. In addition, there's also free CPD accredited training and support once you're appointed to a school governing board. This is offered by our delivery partner, the National Governance Association, via their e-learning link, which you can see on the screen there. And there's also their Young Governor Network, which is for 18 to 40-year-olds. Now, I was really hoping to be able to share this video with you, but for whatever reason, YouTube won't allow me to show the video and listen to the sound at the same time. So what I'm going to say is that Everyone on Board is a video that we created in partnership with the NGA over 2 years ago. It is a resource that we as an organisation use every single day. We encourage employers to share this with their internal BAME and diversity groups and networks. It's all about visibility and the impact of having a diverse board of governors. And what I would urge you to do is to go to our website, which is inspiringgovernance.org. Have a look at the video. It's a 3-minute watch. And if you're interested, there's lots more information, resources on there, and you can even sign up if you so choose. Just as a final, if I've got, have I got any seconds left, Dom?
You've got 30 seconds.
Okay, was just to say that as far as support for our volunteers is concerned, we have 5 regional managers across England that help match volunteers with schools, and we've also got a central team to support with any portal registration if that is something that you need help with. So I will sign off there and stop sharing and pass back over to Dom. So thank you for listening.
Lynn, that was fantastic. And firstly, I see the parallels between the skills people can acquire with what Penny went through. And I think you make a really strong point in regards to the benefits for the Black community, this word connectedness in the community. You know, my children go to school in my local community, and there's a direct correlation between the degree to which that school is connected with its surroundings and its ability to engage with those pupils effectively. And there's so much lived experience out there that we have in the Black community that we need to share. And funnily enough, when I spoke with Horatio earlier this week, he really blew my mind in regards to how he's using his lived experience to make a difference in the school governor space. So without any further delay, let's hand over to you, Horatio. Can you?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, a really big good evening to everyone. My name is Horatio, as has just been mentioned, and I've been a governor at Kingsford Community School for the last 4 years. But before I go into that, I wanted to say it's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you to BYP for inviting me today. So essentially, I'm coming with one core message today, which is I encourage all of you to consider becoming a school governor if you're not a governor already. And hopefully through being able to share some of my experience, I'll give you some food for thought in being able to consider some of the reasons why you might consider becoming a governor in your own instance. But to kind of start my words today, I want to think about the importance of education. We know that education for many people is the bridge between who they are today and who they could potentially be in the future. We know that within the context of the UK, education is incredibly important and we champion free education as an opportunity for creating the future citizens who are basically going to take our society forward. And within that context, we know it's important not only that people receive a good education, but those who are excluded from our school system are significantly impacted in terms of their life opportunities and in terms of the other things that potentially they could have contributed to, but they potentially may be removed from because of, again, the opportunities that come as a result of their education. And it's particularly worrying that in that context, you are 3 times more likely to be excluded if you are a Black person or a Black student in a school today here in the UK. Education is important, school exclusion is important, and in that context, we think, who is it that makes those exclusions? What is the basis by which they are making those exclusions? And how is it that we come to make the decisions that are going to be most effective for those around us in society? And actually, exclusion is only one of the things that we're thinking about within the space of governorship. We're also thinking about the school budget. We're also thinking about how it is that we take on mental health. We're also thinking about safeguarding. We're also thinking about a wide variety of really important considerations which help us to ensure that education, which is so important, becomes something that we're able to take forward in the most effective and meaningful way. And so to that regard, it was these considerations, it was these ideas which caused me to think that actually I would really love to become a governor. And in my own specific instance, I didn't become a governor with an incredible array of governor experience. In fact, actually, when I joined my former school as a governor, Kingsford Community School, when I say former school, I was a former pupil at the school. I joined not because I had an incredible array of experience that I thought was going to be put forward as a kind of strategic leader, you could say, but because I cared and because I thought that the skills and experiences that I had were going to contribute to me being able to give some level of insight to explore some of the questions and problems that the school was thinking about in the context of its students. And so as I speak to you today, and I speak to you as someone who, again, has been a governor for 4 years, I say that the reasons why it is that you potentially may consider becoming a governor is not simply because of the importance of the field that you might be in, whether it's you become a school governor or you take another cause that you're incredibly passionate about, but because of the ability that you have to continually not only make an impact, but consider and shape the future in whichever way it might be that you choose to shape it. And as has been mentioned by the people who have come previously, your skills are important, your expertise is important. Simply being able to speak up, being able to speak on something that you care about, and being able to speak on something that you think is important is often a really, really good starting point for you to be able to make an impact. So without wasting any further time, I bring my comments to a pause for today, and I strongly urge all of you to think about the causes that are important to you and whether or not specifically in the school governing space, there could be an opportunity for you.
Horatio, I have to say, I'm quite overwhelmed. Whenever I hear passionate people speak, that tends to happen. And the bit that really resonated with me is, number one, your humility, saying that when you started, you didn't see yourself as someone who had this strategic acumen, but you did it quite simply because you cared. And if that's all you have to bring to the table, you know, for people listening, I think that's enough, because where you've got resources provided by, you know, people like Penny and people like Lynn, then they can fill everything else in. But if you don't care, then nothing else matters. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. And in fact, there's a few questions coming through now. And what I'd like to do to make this more interactive is to ask the people who have posed the questions on the chat to ask the question themselves. So one which has stood out for me is from Kemi. Kemi, are you on the line? Can you ask your question about the time, and how much time is involved? If not, I will ask it. Maybe Kemi's unable to unmute. Let me ask the question. So Kemi's asked, how much time is involved being a governor? I'm just imagining the average person, you know, is busy doing their day job. Potentially they've got children to look after as well. Maybe there's other family involved, other commitments. How much of my time is this going to take away from me? Who would like to go first on this one? Maybe you, Penny.
Kemi says she's on the bus and it's noisy, so she can't unmute. I love your commitment to this, Kemi. This is brilliant. Bus journey get in the way. It's really difficult to say what the time commitment of being a trustee is. It's a little bit, how long is a piece of string? One study said it's about 30 hours a year. Another said it's 5 hours a week. And really, I guess you need to decide how much time have you got to give to this and how hands-on you want to be, because the trustee roles vary enormously. It often depends whether there's staff or not in the charity. If there are staff, it tends to be a lower time commitment. And then to find, there's some comments about Kemi coming in now. and then to find a role that fits the amount of time you've got. In my 4 trustee roles, I've never done more than 30 hours a year. So it's definitely possible to find ones that are lower on the time commitment end.
Thank you. And Horatio, the same question to you, please.
So as a school governor, the core commitment in the context of the secondary school that I work at is to meet 4 times a year. So you'll have 4 2-hour meetings as the core commitment, and you'll have reading in advance of that. So whether it's grades, issues that have come up in the school, and how it ordinarily works in the context of our school is that you have the core commitment, which is thinking about academics and safeguarding issues and so on, but then you'll have the opportunity to kind of branch out into additional subgroups to take on additional responsibility. So from the context of kind of year, you might be thinking about a responsibility from my standpoint of up to about 20 hours, but there is great level of flex with that, as I mentioned, because you do have the opportunity to go on to the subgroups. And I'd really quickly touch on one of the points which was raised via chat a moment ago, which was about academic expertise. And it, again, linking back to what we were saying before about some of the skills that you bring forward, I'd mentioned that there are so many different interest areas within the context of the school, thinking about safeguarding, thinking about mental health, thinking about all of the variety of different issues that you have in the school. So yes, if you have academic capability, maybe that might lend to some of the academic challenges that the school faces, but then there are opportunities to add to the wider plethora of challenges that the school faces as well. And so all of the different skills that you might be able to offer, academic or otherwise, are definitely valued within the context of the school.
Brilliant, thank you. Lynn, a question for you. So I'm thinking cynically, I don't often do this, but I'm just imagining people are there thinking, I wouldn't want to do this and sort of upset anyone and get things wrong. So what kind of mistakes do people tend to make when they start out? And typically, how are they supported then to be able to get them right going forward?
Good question. I think probably I would say the overriding mistake, if you can, it's not really a mistake, it's probably not having the confidence to get involved from day one. And I think if you can take your seat at the table and, you know, have a voice straight away, yes, you need to learn some of the, you know, education has some of the most weird acronyms. So, you know, but there are lots of areas where we can support and help. The National Governance Association provides a lot of training and support. All of it's CPD accredited, so it's great for your professional and personal development. But I would say the mistakes most commonly made is taking a seat at the table, not having your voice heard, or not speaking up so that your voice is heard, and also to make sure that you do take the time to learn about governance. And that, when we were talking before about the amount of time that you commit to it, same as what Penny said, how long's a piece of string? However, I can tell you from my experience as a governor, and also from my day job working with, you know, hundreds and hundreds of schools, I would say that if you look at between 5 and 8 hours a month during the academic year, so you probably wouldn't have very much to do across the summer when the schools are on their school holidays. This year, however, that all went out the window because we've all been very involved in risk assessments and that kind of thing to make sure that the schools are COVID safe for children going back. That's been a real overriding issue right across the summer. But ordinarily, you would say go, as Horatio said, going to the meetings, but the time scale involved now is probably less than it has been because you haven't got that commuting time at the moment. And in all honesty, we don't know when schools are going to allow non-essential visitors, which governors are non-essential visitors. We don't know when they're going to be allowed back into school. So, you know, anyone looking at taking up a role now will be doing it virtually, and then will have the time to dedicate to the learning side of things.
If anything, it's become an easier time relatively to start the process of being a governor. You don't have to leave your house, travel across town. You can do it from the comfort of your living room even.
Exactly, Dom, yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, I've got a question here from Magnus. Are you able to ask your question, Magnus? Okay, I'm going to ask.
Yeah, I'm able to ask. Sorry, I've got my hands full here, to be honest with you.
Quite literally.
My daughter, yes, I've got my hands full. So sorry, it may have been touched upon already.
No problem. Good to see you.
Yeah, that's it.
Please ask away.
My question was, being a trustee, and again, sorry if I missed it, are you able to kind of be a trustee and drive new initiatives from the get-go in terms of things that you're passionate about and changes that you want to make?
Who would like to answer that question? Penny, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Magnus, your daughter's gorgeous. Yes and no. So I'd say, I think partly you need to get to know the charity. So, you know, it's important not to come in and immediately go, right, we've got to do this all differently, because there's a kind of getting your feet under the table kind of stage, which is just about making sure you understand the charity's work, you're fully inducted. And that doesn't need to last a really long time, but I'd say you've got to understand the field that the charity's working in and the cause it's working on before you drive new stuff. But as a trustee, absolutely, you can drive new initiatives. Definitely, you're one person on a board, and no voice on that board has a greater vote than any other vote. So you've got to convince the other people around the table that your initiative is one to back. So it's not as simple as just coming in and go, right, we're going to do this, because all the other trustees have got to agree with you. Does that answer it, Magnus?
Let me jump in as well.
It does. Thank you.
I think from my experience so far it's more about bringing your skills, like what you have right now that you can help them with, immediately, versus kind of saying, hey, this needs to completely change. You need to change everything. It's more like, okay, these are the skill sets that I have. So for example, we're good at marketing. So maybe we can help the charity with marketing and getting their voice heard and getting access to the Black community. So you kind of come with the expertise that you have to drive the change. And then together with everybody else, it's how the charity kind of raises its game. And then you can start bringing in new initiatives.
Great, there you go. A perfect set of answers. There's another really good question here from Tolu Akin. Are you able to ask your question?
Oh, I think my question was already answered. But I was interested in understanding how those who are quite young can get a seat on the table. Do they care about experience? Like, how important is that?
Great question. Who would like to take that one?
I'm happy to take that. Are you referring to school governor, Tolu?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because I'm really interested in working with schools, but I'm a recent graduate. I've only been working for a few months, so I was a bit nervous about reaching out to schools, not knowing if I had enough experience.
Okay, so you will have recent experience of of having been in the education system, which is one of the things that we're really keen to bring onto governing boards. And also, just for your information, so that it might make you feel a bit little less about it, but we actually run programs with some universities with kind of their, say, third year undergraduates, so that they can actually get experience of being on a board, so that when they go into the world of work, they've already got some of that experience to take with them. So you absolutely would have an opportunity to sit on a board without a shadow of a doubt. You'd be snapped up rather quickly, I would imagine.
Okay,
Great.
Thank you very much.
And I think that segues nicely into a question I have, which is, when you look at the stats and the levels of underrepresentation, chances are then that as a Black person or as a woman entering a board position, whether it's a trusteeship or governorship, you're likely to be the only person of that demographic in the room. So what do your organisations do to support people who may be in that position? Would you like to jump in, Penny? And then by all means, Lynn or Horatio, please give your answer.
I think people are often in that position of being the first person of colour, sometimes the first woman, the first under whatever age threshold. And I think there's a kind of question to each of you as to how much of a trailblazer you want to be. Do you want to be that first person? Are you happy to be that first person? Or actually, do you want to find a board where you're not the only any certain demographic? Because there are plenty of boards out there that some boards are less or more diverse, so that there is a bit of a choice out there. So there's a question there, and kind of, do you want to be the first? And then in terms of the support that we provide, the people that go through our programs, we train people to be effective trustees. And actually, I think it's really worth saying that lots of people become trustees with no training at all. That is the most common way into being trustee, is somebody asks you to be a trustee and you just go and you join a board and there is no training. So anybody who's actually taken the time and the effort to get themselves trained up, to do some reading, to get to know the charity, to get to know charity governance more generally, you're already joining in a better position than many, many existing trustees. And it's easy to feel nervous, but I think actually you don't need to.
Penny, that's brilliant. Horatio, what was it like for you when you started then? How were you supported?
So I think there have been some really interesting questions that have been put forward. So even though I didn't start with any governance experience, I had started with being a student for 5 years in a secondary school who was able to relate to the ideas and challenges that those young people are going through. And actually, as I stepped into that governors meeting for the first time, there was a strong reception and a strong recognition of the fact that the skills and the insights that I was able to bring as someone who was in that room, who was able to kind of relate to what the students were doing, was incredible and very, very different from some of the insights that other people were able to bring. And so I think Lynn and Penny were really right to highlight that there's a continuous journey or process of learning that you'll go through. And anything that you don't know in the governance space, you'll continue to learn if you have the willingness to do so. But the life insights that you have that have naturally come with your experience and what you've been able to learn just by being you and going into the spaces that you have been in are really valuable and can offer a lot. And so I guess answering the question of how they accepted me, I think they accepted me in large part because of the recognition that they had that I was able to bring something that was really different. But they also accepted me because of the recognition that I was really keen to continue to learn about the aspects that I didn't know. And that marrying of both of those two things meant that I was well placed to continue to not only make an impact in the immediate term, but to continue to grow that impact.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And Lynn, another question for you. I've sat on boards, or I sit on a board, and one of the most overwhelming things at the beginning is the board pack. It's, you know, back when you'd print the papers, it could be a pack of papers this big. How do you consume all of that? What's the skill to getting through the pack so you can meaningfully engage with that meeting?
Yeah, so when you are appointed through Inspiring Governance, you get a governance handbook, which comes directly from them. So you can do some reading beforehand. You can use it as a reference book. It's a really good journal to check back on. But when you go to your first governor meeting, and Horatio will probably be able to recognize this, there is a lot of paperwork. You know, they are you know, there's risk assessments, there's safeguarding, there's lots of things that you've got to read, there's lots of things you've got to do, but you can take it away and you can read through it in your own time. And I would say probably once you've been to one governor meeting, you will have a good understanding of what's required, what the school is about, what they're doing, because there is a school improvement plan, and that school improvement plan sets out what is going to happen. That's the strategic document, and so all your meetings throughout the year are guided by that document, and that's what you're measuring as the governing board. You're measuring the head teacher ultimately against delivery of that. So that's something that the most important document that you read. But in terms of everything else, if you look at the strategic plan and they've got some safeguarding issues, or they're looking at a particular area of the curriculum, then you would just go onto your e-learning link and you would look for the module that was relevant to that. So your learning would be governed by what was happening in the school. So you're only learning what you need to learn as you go. So it's very manageable, and they're pretty much bite-sized modules. No module is over 40 minutes, and some of them are just 10 minutes.
Perfect. Can you just elaborate on safeguarding for anyone who's not familiar with the term, please?
Elaborate on what safeguarding means?
Please, yes, please.
So in a school setting, safeguarding means that teachers keep themselves and each other safe from situations. So children, they also are responsible for keeping children safe. So making sure that when children are dropped off at school, that there's a clear risk assessment for things like dropping children off, cars and all the rest of it. But it's just making sure that everybody within the organisation, which is the school, all of the stakeholders, all of the people who visit the school, that remain safe within that. But there's also a wider context to safeguarding in terms of specifically keeping children safe, and that can have much greater context. And it would be something that, if you're on a committee that looked after safeguarding, that you'd need to learn about, and that would be around perhaps children who may be at risk, for example, children who perhaps have some special educational needs and that sort of thing.
I think that's a really useful insight, because for the average person, when they think of a school, they're just thinking about the delivery of a curriculum. But actually, there's a number of different layers and processes sort of overlapped and interwoven between each other. I mean, as you've just highlighted, the school drop-off and how that works within a school, demands consideration and planning and discussion to get right. So I imagine that's another area a governor would be involved in.
Well, actually, I don't want to scare the living daylights out of everybody on the event here, but what I will share with you is we had our first governor meeting of this academic year last week, and we've been supporting the role of a school governor. Used to be called a critical friend. We no longer use that terminology, but for anybody who doesn't know what a critical friend is, it's basically someone who is encouraging and supportive, like a friend, like you are with your friends, but who can also challenge and then provide honest feedback. And sometimes it's about be asking those challenging and sometimes difficult questions. And so throughout the last 6 months, our school remained open to key worker staff and certain other children. And through that period, we found out that we added it up, and we are on to risk assessment number 347.
Wow.
And that is, a lot of those are changing the entrance and exits for various different year groups within the school. So there's, and they're all done by the head teacher, so I'm not scaring anybody, and the governing board okay those.
Amazing. I mean, it's I suppose in one sense it's daunting that you'll have to be involved, but then there's a tangible example of how you can make a difference. It's quite literally about preserving people's safety and preserving lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
A question for you, Penny. So let's imagine someone has been listening to this talk today and now wants to go out and be a trustee of a charity, but the only charities they can think of are the ones who might stop them on their way to Starbucks and say, you know, please sign here and donate £5 a month. They're not necessarily the best charities for you. Maybe they're too big and they're not looking for people like the person in this hypothetical example. So can you talk me through the process of how you match people who are keen, willing and able with charities that have these positions available?
So I think if you're on this call and you're thinking, this sounds great, I'd love to know more, a really good starting point is to go to some of the vacancy sites. And the biggest site is Reach Volunteering. It's completely free. It's got hundreds of trustee vacancies on there. Particularly if you're in London, you'll find that there's a lot. And I'm not in London, by the way. I think that some of you will be. So, and you can also set yourself up a profile with Reach so that it pings you an email if you say that I'm interested in animals or environment or social mobility, and it'll ping you an alert when a new vacancy comes in. That's a really good starting point also because you can see what's out there. I think people are always really stunned by just the range of incredible charities that are out there. And you know, it's just inspiring, and you don't always know what you're interested in until you see it. So that's like, I guess that's what you might do as an individual just wanting to take this further. In terms of getting on board, the way we work is that we're teach a man or woman to fish. So we have masterclasses and courses where we will help you work out what causes you're interested in and then help you find charities to apply for, and then help you work on your application, so help you actually work on your CV and cover letter, and then prep for interview, as well as learning about how to be an effective trustee. Does that answer it, Dom?
Yeah, it really does. It really does. Thank you. I'm just looking at the chat here, and there's some brilliant comments, and I can see that people are being very inspired to either learn more or to, you know, just get on with the process. So expect to be busy with applications over the course of next week. There's one question here I've got from Moji Greenwell. Moji, are you able to ask your question?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I was actually looking at governorship recently. I'm in the Northwest, and I don't know if there's kind of a higher saturation of volunteer governors here, but the school I was looking at seemed to have quite a lot of governors on the board already. So I suppose that kind of, it put me off a bit because I thought, well, they're not going to need me. So I just wondered if there is kind of a rule as to how many governors, you know, a school should have on the board, or is it more about the makeup of the board? So that was kind of where I was coming from with that.
Great. Penny or Lynn, whoever feels.
I'm happy to answer it from a school perspective. I don't know if it's the same, so maybe we'll do a dual answer here. But from a school perspective, a typical governing board is 10 to 12. Horatio, is that roughly, would you say you have somewhere in the region? Yeah. So the governing board is made up of a chair of governors, and then there's a vice chair, and then there's a parent governor. Occasionally there's two parent governors. And then there will be all of the other co-opted governors who are voted in by or co-opted through the chair and usually the head. And 10 to 12, I mean, if you've been unsuccessful getting onto a board in a particular school, then it might be worth you popping onto Inspiring Governance and having a look, because it's a geographic, there's a geographic search in there. So you could just look at schools within your specific geographic. So it might just widen your opportunities a little bit if you were prepared to look at a school that was in your area, but not necessarily the one that you're looking at. And then perhaps if you get some governance experience, then the next time there's a vacancy at that school, you may well be in a position to be able to move across to do that.
Brilliant, thank you, Lynn. I'm very conscious of time now, and I think we are drawing towards the close. Can all four of our panel speakers just think of some final thoughts for maybe 20, 30 seconds that you would like to leave people with? And in that time, I will just refer to the polls that we've done. One at the beginning and another one's just been run now. And what's really interesting is at the start, the majority of people hadn't even heard of governorship or trusteeship. And if they had done, as far as they were concerned, it wasn't really for them. I'm just looking at the numbers now without sort of analysing the data in too much detail. The number that's really standing out to me is 96% keeps changing of people are now actively thinking about doing something. So it goes to show a whole number of different things. Just generally speaking, where you can acquire the knowledge, it opens up new doors, it opens up new opportunities. But then specifically for this topic, it goes to show that if you engage with people like Lynn and Horatio and Penny and get the information you need, there's a tangible opportunity to support, you know, your career if you're thinking, you know, in those terms, but also to have a positive impact on your community as well. Horatio, please, can you give me your final thoughts in 20 to 30 seconds, please?
So they say in order to achieve something, you need the motivation, the ability, and the circumstance. So if you find an area that you're really passionate about, that's the motivation. If you are willing to learn, if you are willing to bring on the expertise that you have to a space, that's the talent or the ability. And in the context of the schools, if you look across the country, there are definitely a need for governors across the country, and that's where the circumstance comes in. And so for everyone who's on this call, if you are able to tick all three, or at least partially in some degree, hopefully there's an opportunity for you out there somewhere.
Great, thank you very much. Kike, can you please share your thoughts?
Ultimately, I think you're never too busy. You know, I'm very busy, but I wasn't too busy for this opportunity. I just think it's super important. I think we need more leaders. You know, obviously we have our leadership conference next month, and we're always pushing leadership because there is a leadership problem in the Black community. And I think the fact that we have about 45 people on this webinar, each one of us can be trustees or governors, and that's changing an organization, changing a school, and your presence will make that difference. You know, don't think that, you know, your contribution is too small. It's so needed. And if we're hearing only 1% of Black people are school governors, but yet we're saying we want to change the curriculum, we all have stories about what life was like at school, the racism we might have endured at school, but there's no Black people on the governorship. So let us be those governors, let us be the trustees, and let's make that change that we want. Let's tell our friends, our family and others, because we can all get on these boards and we should be on them.
Thank you, Kike. Penny? I
guess my message is just do it. It's potentially life-changing for you, and it's completely critical for our charities. And then a final thought, somebody said, is it a good time now? Well, actually, not only is it a good time because meetings are virtual, interviews are virtual as well. So in terms of the actual application process, now is a good time to go through it. It'll take you less time because hopefully you're not traveling to and from interviews.
It's a really good point. And Lynn, please.
Well, firstly, I echo everything that Kike, Horatio and Penny have said. So I am going to give you a quote from one of our employer supporters, because I think this is quite good in terms of looking at your own development in this. She said, volunteering as a school governor helps employees strengthen and develop their skills and bring new experiences and perspectives back to the workplace. This can benefit performance in current roles and accelerate accelerate career progression, so has a tangible effect on an individual's future. So my final word, I echo Penny, why not? Why would you not?
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So let me wrap up. What an amazing discussion. Penny, Horatio, Lynn, Kike, thank you very much for your time and being so open with us and you know, unfolding some of these questions and untangling some of the knots we had on this topic. I think listening has opened up a whole new door of opportunity. And it's not just, again, to improve career aspirations, but it's also to play a more active and strategic role in our community, you know, where we live, let alone the Black community. I also tend to find in life, you can research things until you're blue in the face, but at some point you just need to get involved and be prepared to make some mistakes along the way and learn from them. And seemingly, you know, listening to what everyone has to say, there's so much support out there, you know, in your institutions, but also in the BYP as a whole. So you're gonna be in safe hands if you bite the bullet and give it a try. So again, thank you for your time. Finally, please download the BYP app if you haven't done so already. There's some fantastic features within there, and it's also an opportunity to connect with a whole world of people, you know, akin to what we've experienced today, which can provide some fresh opportunities and bolster your career aspirations. And very finally, we have the conference, the BYP conference at the end of the month, 30th of October, not this month, 30th of October, entitled A Decade of Proactive Change. Sign up and represent. The last conference was absolutely mind-blowing, and the BYP has just got bigger and better since then. Kike, is there anything else you would like to say before we close?
No, that's everything. But if anyone here have any events that you'd like to promote, professional development events, you can post it directly on our platform. We push it out to all of our network. If you'd like your organization to work with BYP Network, then just shoot us an email, info@bypnetwork.co.uk. And yeah, come to our conference. This was amazing. And we have about 20, 30 sessions on our conference that will also be amazing. So thank you all for coming. And I really do hope that you all become governors and trustees and, you know, we see more Black leaders, essentially.
Have a good evening and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.